And we're live. And with me, I have Gryffix. How are you doing today, Gryffix?
Very good, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well. By the way, for anybody who's watching, which so far nobody's watching right now, but there will be some background noise. Oh, well, I'm pretty sure that people would watch later. I have tweeted it out.
Yeah,
But
I
I'm
retweeted it, so people should be able to find it.
right. How would you describe yourself?
How would I describe myself? What, like me as an individual, or my political opinions, or
How would you describe your personality?
my personality? Um, that's tough. I guess I'm a very confident person in a way. I was always a bit of an outsider when I was in high school and primary school, and I sort of grew up being that, and I guess I just learned how to sort of appreciate myself in that sense that I was not like your stereotypical insecure 13-year-old. You know, when I hit puberty, I was, I think, a bit more mature than most of my peers. I was very, very content with who I was. And I think now at the moment, I think I'm rather friendly. I hope maybe I give off the wrong impression when I do like response videos that might come across as rather aggressive, but I think I'm a rather friendly person, very nuanced. I'm probably way more in the center of things than some people are on YouTube. So yeah, I guess that could be a description of me. A weirdo, but not in a too, extreme way.
Yeah, I did see your video response to AJ Plus. It's very good, very much in detailed, and I really liked all the information I received because most people they just give opinion pieces, but you didn't just give an opinion piece. You actually gave research so that everybody could look at the research. Because when a feminist or a progressive says one thing and we say another thing, then people don't know who's right. So up in the air, but we actually have links and data to back up your claims. I think that people listen more.
Well, yeah, it's really really important, and sometimes if you have like moral discussions or ethnical discussions, uh what is the right thing to do, then sometimes you don't have facts at hand, and then you just have to have that subjective conversation. But I think if you can bolster your viewpoint with facts, I mean, it's necessary. That specific AJ Plus video that you're talking about, for the people who have not seen that, it's a video in which I respond to AJ Plus, a news network, and they basically make the claim that radicalization doesn't exist. And not only is it very misleading and, in my opinion, factually incorrect, I think it's actually dangerous in these times to put such falsehoods out there. But yeah, obviously, if I'm gonna make my case for why it's false, I have to show why it's false. And yeah, I try to do my research as much as I can.
Yeah, I agree with you on the idea that it's very dangerous because I've had base mama on, not base mom Christine Hoff Summers, but a different person entirely, based mama, and she's an ex-Muslim, and she knows the person who's like who's Dutch, and she went to like the Middle East, like Qatar, and she got raped, and when she got raped and told the police arrest her because in their mind, she just confessed to committing adultery. So she got arrested instead. And I do think that when people say all of these nice things about Islam, there are going to be people who actually believe them and have the ability to go to these Middle Eastern countries because they're going to get in their heads like, this is a religion of peace. This is a religion of peace. So when they go there, or if a Muslim man wants to date them and it happens, it could eventually hurts them in the end.
Yeah, I think that is, of course, the most direct example of it being dangerous. If you actually go to the Middle East, I mean, I have to go to Morocco most likely next year. Not Morocco's not that bad, but you need to be aware of the differences that there are. And if you have indeed feminists writing articles like Islam is where all the feminist ideas come from, they get a very weird perception of reality. But of course, that's what I was mostly referring to was in terms of terrorism that we in Europe, especially, are dealing with right now. I believe that the last terror attack was only a few days ago, and it's almost like a daily thing at this point. And it's already a very tough pill to swallow for people that, they let in all these immigrants and all these refugees, most of whom I'm sure are decent people, but there are definitely people amongst that group that aren't, and that have a cultural background and a religious conviction that is simply not compatible with the country that they're living in. And they have to accept, first of all, that they were wrong in thinking this would just be kumbaya and it would all go well. But they also have to accept that maybe you do need to criticize this group, as wrong as it might feel. Some people feel like it's racist to do so or intolerant to do so. They want to be so tolerant and so nice, so bad, that they have a lot of difficulties just acknowledging that there are problems with Islam and that there are problems with Muslims. And then when we're finally sort of seeing a breakthrough, for instance, in the most recent terror attacks, I was on Twitter. I have my Twitter settings set on international, so I get the internationally trending topics. On the relevant hashtags, such as pray for Nice or whatever, I didn't see as many people going, oh, this has nothing to do with Islam, as usually was the case. I saw those voices that said, oh, Islam is a religion of peace. I saw them slowly dying out, or at least they weren't brave enough anymore to openly state their opinion. And when we finally see that breakthrough, and with that the possibility to have an intellectually honest discussion about it, we at the same time see AJ Plus and Young Turks, pumping out videos that sort of try to push people back into that incorrect opinion, and I think that is so counterproductive, and it is literally dangerous in the sense that people need to understand more than ever what the problem is because we fail at addressing it.
Yeah, yeah, when it comes to the terror attacks that's happening in Europe, it does seem that it's happening almost on a daily basis. It's like I'm hearing about it now all of the time. It's like every few days now, it seems like there's another terror attack that is making headline news.
Yeah, of course, you had Nice terror attacks like that seem to happen every few other months or so. Those big ones with like 80 people, 100 people dead. Yeah, the Paris massacre and Brussels, of course. Uh, that there is still an interval, between uh, terrorist attacks of that magnitude. But what you really see are a lot of these small things. So, for instance, an individual blows themselves up, fails to kill other people in the process, but he tries. And you see people that attack strangers in a train with an axe, or someone who stabbed, I think, a pregnant woman to death with a machete. Small things like that are occurring in everyday life, and that to me is really scary. I mean, a lot of people, sorry, seem relieved when they find out that it's a lone wolf. It's like, oh, it's not ISIS. But that worries me more because I know ISIS is the enemy. I know that if you are a member of ISIS, you're not a friend of mine. I know that. What scares me is that there are lone wolves with no affiliation to bigger groups who still feel um, a connection with that ideology and who independently, just with they live their lives, they live in some European neighborhood somewhere in France or Germany or wherever, and they just decide, hey, this is a good idea on their own. I find that more scary because that means that whatever ISIS is, it planted a seed, and we're now seeing the harvest of that. And you can very well consider possibility that if we eradicate ISIS, so to speak, that this won't stop yet because, well, these people do it independently from ISIS.
Is that why you and Carlton T were very much bothered and upset of the statements from TJ, the Amazing Atheist, and why you're like, man, you're so ignorant, because he was focusing on the few good Muslims in America, while you guys are suffering from all the rapes and the murders and bombings in Europe.
Well,
Is that
yeah,
correct?
yeah, we were upset with look, TJ is someone, I have to admit, that who did inspire me and most likely inspired the crowd to some extent in, why we started YouTube channels. He sort of laid the groundwork, I think, for, this whole community when he started out his channel. What is it, 10 years ago? I don't even know. And I respect him, and I think he is an intelligent, eloquent guy, but I think he is, and I have to admit, I have not seen his stream with crowd after that, so I don't know if he ever reconsidered his opinion. But in that particular video, he seems to not understand the differences between Europe and America. A lot of Americans, when they think about radical Islam, they think terrorism, they think 9/11, but it is not just that. Because obviously America has seen plenty of that as well. It is just, like I said, the small things in everyday life, how these people integrate and how they will contribute to society. And America and Europe are fundamentally different. Europe is geographically connected to the Middle East. As hard as it is to get here, it's still way easier to get here than to swim across, the ocean. So when shit happens in the Middle East, we tend to get them first, so to speak. And the people who go to America at least have the plane ticket to go there, and with that, the money to buy the plane ticket. And they probably have the money because they have the job, and they have the job because they have the education. So you get a whole different type of migrant. And you get them in lesser volumes. You can spread them equally. We're in Europe talking about just more than 1 million refugees in Germany alone. That's a big number. And you see that there are entire not villages, but like neighborhoods and in the suburbs where an entire section of town is just occupied by Muslims. That only Muslims live there. And you basically get like little Iraq, little Syria in European countries. And that's retarded because those people can never properly integrate. And I'm not saying that all those people are bad, not at all. The not all Muslims meme became a bit laughable, but it's obviously true, not all Muslims. But it is an environment that makes it very, very difficult for an immigrant to become part of the country that they now live in. And we see the outcome of that. There are women in London, if they go through certain Muslim neighborhoods, they are harassed because they're not covering themselves. That's London. And in France, there was a lady and with her daughters near some swimming pool, I think. The girl was 8 years old, and she got stabbed because she wore inappropriate clothing. It's stuff like that. You have less of that in America, and our problems are of a different nature, of course. And I think TJ, in his video, looked at the problems from a very American-centric worldview. He reasoned the way he would reason in America, whereas you just need to put yourself in Europe's shoes for a second. What we have is not what you are dealing with, and that's why, whereas an American atheist might really, really, really focus on Christianity, because Christianity is a big religion in America, a lot of conservative Christians over there. I mean, I heard that they tried to leak out that Bernie Sanders is an atheist just so he would get less votes. In my country, you could say that a candidate has, no religious beliefs. That really wouldn't damage them at all. If we find out that someone's an atheist, who cares? So obviously, a lot of American atheists tend to focus on Christianity. But Christians in Europe tend to be so much more mild, and it's idiotic to think that they are like the biggest threat to our political system. But there is a threat, and that threat is mainly from the Islamic corner. And that is why we need to focus on that. Instead of, whenever a terror attack happens, point at the Iraq war or point at everything a Christian has ever done. I mean, that's counterproductive.
Yeah, I can see where you're saying, because something I do like I've been following Sargon for months and months now, and I've seen some videos by Krauts and T, but I've also been following the Amazing Atheist, and I didn't watch all of his video with Krauts and T. I think I watched the first 5 or 10 minutes and then put it on saved later. And he said to Crowd that the tweets he was responding to, TJ was specifically talking about terrorism. He was specifically talking about terrorism in America. He wasn't referring to Europe. He wasn't talking about that at all. He was referring to his own country. So it's kind of a lot like he was saying that there's this communication error where he took something that was where he was talking to Americans and he was applying that to Europe. And the reason why TJ talks about what goes on in America is because he's an American, and on previous videos he says that's why he doesn't really like talking about what goes on in other countries, because he's uneducated about that. And it's kind of like he got to try to get as much information as possible and try to know as much as the natives, which is never going to happen. You're never going to know as much as a native. That's why I think more people just focus on their own country to avoid making a fool of themselves, instead of focusing on what happens in another country. And he made a new updated video where he updated his views on Muslims, but it's still American centric. But his new views was that Muslim is a problem, and he thinks that there should be FBI agents in some mosque to infiltrate, pretend to be one of them, weave out the radicals and figure out some sort of punishments for them.
Well, yeah, I get that he talks only about America. I'm not asking TJ or blaming TJ for talking about anything but America, but it is strange to me then that in a video, Kraut's video originally was about, I think the title was quite literally, why Europe needs its own secular movement. That literally screams in every possible way, this is a video about Europe. And TJ was not even the main point in that video. TJ passed the review somewhere near the end where Kraut made that cornfield Pakistan joke. And he responded to that as if Kraut legit attacked him, as if that entire video was just aimed at TJ. And then he, like you said, apparently just started talking about the problems in America. So, yeah, but why is that relevant? Why would you respond to a video made by a European about Europe and then try to counter him by telling him what it's like in America? That sounds like not a very productive thing to do, I guess.
Oh yeah, that was addressed in the hangout between TJ and Krauts and T. I don't want to misquote either of them, so for those who are watching, I guess you just got to go and watch TJ talking to Krauts in their Drunken Peasants podcast, because I don't want to get it all wrong,
Yeah, I have no problem with TJ at all, but I think that might just be a point on which we could have a different opinion. But I don't know how well I understand his opinion at this point, so.
Yeah, he tried addressing it Crowd was a lot you weren't even the main points of the video. And TJ, I think he said, well, it's like he used his face and his name for a good bit of the video, and you don't see like Jacqueline Glenn there, you don't see Repsian or Steve Shives. Like Steve Shives was nowhere to be found on Kraut's video.
Well, yeah, he did make that point, why go after me? But that's the thing, though. I don't expect Steve Shives to be my ally in this. I don't expect Steve Shives to be of any use in this debate, and if anything, he's gonna wear the debate down. I expect TJ to be an ally in it. And I expect TJ, if I disagree with him and I have a discussion with him, that we either, politely agree to disagree, or that we can convince each other one way or the other. I think the reason why he responded to TJ is because he thought TJ can do better than this in his mind. But I can't speak for Kraut, but that's why I would do it. I wouldn't respond or engage in a discussion with Steve Shives the way I would with TJ.
Yeah, well, they eventually talked about it, and unfortunately, I've only seen the very first 5 or 10 minutes of the hangout between Krautzen T and TJ, and I had to do other things, and I never ever completed it. But it's out there somewhere. I should probably just add a link, when the hangout is over, so people could watch it for themselves. But I haven't been able to finish it. All right, so would you describe your well, you went, but have you ever been a feminist before?
Myself, no. It's a difficult question to answer in the sense that there are a lot of people who say that, if you believe in equality, then you are by default a feminist. And if you would have used that rhetoric on me when I was 12, then maybe I would have fallen for that, and I would have been, well, a feminist, not an active feminist that would actually advocate for anything, but like that passive feminist of, well, I believe in equality, of course I'm a feminist. But I don't think I've ever took that title upon myself. It's really strange. My mom, she never tried to push any political opinion on me. I literally didn't know what my mom thought about anything until I was like 14, and I really started questioning her about it. She would always oppose my opinions. Whatever I'd say, she'd oppose me in a discussion because she wanted me to learn that my opinions were questionable, and that she wanted me to learn how to deal with a different opinion. So even if she'd agree with me, she'd take the opposite side of the argument for educational purposes, so to speak. But I was never raised into thinking anything bad of feminists. But I remember from like age 8 seeing them on TV and thinking, what is the problem? You're talking about sexism. I don't see it. I mean, this sexism, like racism, sounds like a horrible thing. So how can I not notice this if what you say is really going on? And I've had that ever since I was a very small kid, and of course in the last 3 years that got some more solid shape, I guess. I'm now actively opposing it, but I've never liked it overall.
Yes, I used to be a passive feminist. It's like when I was in high school. Yeah, it was high school where we were learning about feminism. Like I live in the Deep South, and even in the Deep South, feminism was part of English class, and we were learning about the history of feminism, and we were learning about how feminism was so important in society. So it's like, and so like I got the whitewashed version of feminism, like learning feminist literature. It's like, oh yeah, I'm a feminist. Then I saw TJ, the Amazing Atheist, talk about it. And it's like, oh, they're that crazy? No, I'm not. It took
I think
to see what's wrong with it.
Yeah, I do think it is important to make that distinction between passive and active feminists. And I bring this up quite a lot, but like last year or something, Forrest Whitaker, the actor, he shared a tweet by Emma Watson from the He for She project, and he was just like, "Oh, I'm a feminist," and then he got shit for that. There were people that were, calling him regressive or social justice warrior for that. But seriously, Forrest Whitaker is, sorry, that's my neighbor's bicycle, for motorbike. I don't know if you can hear it, but that's my audio. Sorry.
I can't hear it at all. I can't.
Oh, okay. Look, yeah, my neighbor has like this big Harley Davidson. It's really loud, but good, you can't hear it. Um, Forrest Whitaker, he got a lot of shit for that, and I think, is this honestly a guy you want to go after? To be honest, I think he just takes that label upon himself because someone says feminism means equality. So then by default, he will probably think, oh, well, if that's what feminism is, then I am a feminist. And there are a lot of people like that out there, and I don't think they're worth your energy, but sometimes they get the same amount of shit as someone who is like Anita Sarkeesian.
Yeah, because I've been a passive feminist for years because the only definition I had was like they're the equal for equality of men and women. But when I saw the Amazing Atheist talk about it, and as I learned more about it, it's like, what, they're crazy. And that's when I turned away from it. So I'm glad I never got hate for it. I'm glad that nobody ever got to know my ass. But I do see your points. Like, people say that they're a feminist. It doesn't mean that they're a crazy regressive. They probably just don't know much about it.
Yeah, yeah, that, and there are plenty of active feminists like Christina Sommers, for instance, who just legitimately don't have the wrong ideas or wrong intentions or whatever. So that distinction, of course, is always important to be made to make.
Yeah, I think that there are people who are just feminists in the 1960s or the 1970s, and they just want to rescue feminism, and they don't know about this new crazy regressive feminism. So they have things like "not my feminism." Like, I think that there was a website somewhere. They're like, "This is not my brand of feminism," and when I was listening to Micaiah B, she was talking about like how the second wave feminists are constantly fighting with the third wave feminists, and how there's the sex wars where the sex positive feminists are fighting with the sex negative feminists. And I mean, there's just so many types and brands of feminists out there that sometimes they even fights amongst themselves, because it's kind of like I was invited for to a feminist forum one time, and when I looked at it, it was completely dead. It's like there's no activity because it seems like they can't even get along with each other with their views. But it's like at the exact same time, these people block you when you have a different opinion than them. Like, I was tweeting to somebody and I literally just had a different opinion than them. And I got blocked from Twitter. And I keep thinking, how could he function in real life if, a different opinion bothers you? I was nice to her. I was really nice. I was really polite, and I still got blocked. So it's like, I don't even know how these people function if they go crazy when somebody else disagrees with them.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Shives has that. If you want to do a fun experiment, tweet at Steve Shives and say, I politely disagree, because I literally did that and I got blocked. Then I took to some secondary account that I had laying somewhere with less followers, and I'm sure no one knows that account. And I did the same and I got blocked. And it could be a blog bot, of course, but there are for sure people who instantly do that because, well, you have a different viewpoint, and they find that annoying to deal with. I think it's almost like a thing they do on beforehand in case you will ever trigger them in the future. But yeah, I think it's really pathetic.
Yeah, it is indeed very pathetic. Even when it was atheists versus Christians, even the Christians weren't that bad. At least the Christians would have that little back and forth argument there.
Um, yeah, they definitely. I have had my fair share of debates and flame wars with Christians. Um, in my experience, they weren't by far as blocky as feminists and social justice warriors these days.
Let's see. Why are you an anti-feminist?
Um, if I have to, wait, give me a second. I guess because even though there are feminists with good ideas, and even though there are loose ends in the sense that, not a single society will be perfect, equality will never be 50-50. There are instances in which men face severe disadvantages like custody battles and, of course, divorce laws. There are probably things that men have easier than women, but you'll always have that, and I think the necessity of feminism is gone. But I could live with feminism. I could really just give it a pass if it was just useless. But I think it's actually damaging men's rights activists and people that sympathize with men's rights activists can't even get stuff done. Even suggesting, that we need to do something about the male suicide rates in the British Isles um, is sometimes labeled sexist. I mean, how is that? How is it good if, for you as a woman, if a man kills himself? What is sexist about stopping that? What's sexist about opening a center for male victims of abuse? It's an actively sexist movement at this point. It treats women as thoughtless, as children that can't make their own decisions and need to be sheltered from society, and helped like some disabled person. That is really how they tend to see women, and men are all just rapists and monsters. And um, it, no matter who it's directed at, you know, if people would act like that, I'd always oppose that. And yeah, that's I guess why I'm an anti-feminist.
Yeah, that really, really bothered me, and it got under my skin. Of course, it's expected with Steve Shives because he's already out there, but I also heard that's with some guy, and I just found him. His name is Victor Bullock. I'm not sure. I think that's just a pseudonym, but he has this view anti-feminism is bullshit, and somewhere in there, he's like, like he dismisses the male suicide rates, and he's like, well, women, they need to show their nipples, and it's like that is so stupid. Like he prioritized women needing to show their nipples over male suicide rates and men who can't see their children anymore. And it was like, really? That's how you think? That's how you really think? That if a woman has a minor problem, it's extremely important. But if a man is killing himself or he can't see his children anymore, they could care less about it. It's just really weird because should Victor Bullock ever have a child, if he has children someday, he would never be able to see his children. And it's kind of like, that would be a horrible thing to go through if it happens to you.
But people always think it won't happen to them, and as long as it's someone else's concern, they can ignore it because it doesn't suit their narrative.
Mm.
I think.
Yeah. So let's see. So how did you start so why did you start a YouTube channel? And I don't know if you're gonna have the same answer or a difference answer. So, what's inspired you to make anti-feminist YouTube videos? But if you do have a difference answer for both of them, then I would like you to answer them both.
Okay. I think I started a Twitter account in like 2010. Quite literally because the Netherlands back then lost the World Cup finale against Spain, football, and I was literally angry about that. I think those are my first few tweets. But I quickly discovered how fun it can be to talk to other people and to engage in debates. And my Twitter grew pretty fast, which to a large degree I have to say is because Richard Dawkins retweeted me a lot. I mean, he never followed me, but I was a very angry little atheist back then, and um, he retweeted me quite a lot, which is why my Twitter account grew exponentially, so to speak. And at one point, I thought, I could just try to do YouTube videos. I mean, I tried a blog before, and for some reason that couldn't keep me interested. And I always had a thing with cameras and edit software, and I knew that I'd be able to put something together that would look worth watching. And that's why I started. And why specifically anti-feminist videos? That wasn't even my intention from the get-go. I was, at the moment, for instance, my last few videos have the focus more on Islam than on anti-feminism. I have a video response to Unisian laying on the shelf that I still have to edit and upload because at the moment I have other priorities. I just guess that what feminists do often irks me to the point where I think I have to do a video about it. Because honestly, if like next week something more relevant happens, I'll cover that instead. It's not that anti-feminism is inherently my goal. So yeah.
All right, so are you an MRA?
No.
Is there anything in the MGTOW philosophy that you agree with, or do you disagree with the whole entirety of MGTOW?
Okay. Well, let me quickly say something first about the MRA question. I'm not an MRA. I'm more sympathetic to the MRM than I am to feminists in the sense that I think in the West they have legitimate concerns that are not even close to be taken seriously. So I understand why someone would be an MRA. But I often find that the moment you take in a very specific position, whether it is a feminist or a men's rights activist or an LGBTQ activist, you start looking at the world from a certain lens, and you can sort of lose yourself in that. What you see, and that's one of the things that reminds, when I look at MRAs, some of them remind me of feminists in the sense that everything is basically motivated by gender, according to some MRAs, as if nothing. Sometimes I miss the lack of nuance, and I think that is because people are activists. They try to change the world for the good, and because of that, they also look at the world a certain way, and they try to find problems to fix. But if you're always looking for problems, then sometimes that can warp how you perceive reality, if that makes sense. So that's why I would never call myself an activist for any very specific group. I would call myself, for instance, an egalitarian. Because then I just say, I am for equality, and if anyone faces anything but equality, I will stand up for that person. I think it creates a bit of a calmer atmosphere in which you can have a more neutral, objective discussion. Because with MRAs and feminists, I sometimes feel like they're two teams fighting each other. Um, so I guess I'd always call myself an egalitarian, which is not, by the way, me saying that I have a problem with the MRA, not at all. Um, and one of the reasons why I also wouldn't use the label is because activists work hard. Activists are in the trenches, um, and I would not put the label MRA on myself unless I had the credentials. I mean, yeah, I post some shit on Twitter. I do that. Sometimes I make YouTube videos, but I think being an MRA goes further than just that, so I would never call myself it for that reason. To move on to your next question about MGTOWs, I get the ideology. I get why you want to do basically a peaceful protest. Look, I am disagreeing with, how marriage works, how divorce works, and I'm not going to take part in that system anymore because it screws me over. I really, really get that. But it almost seems as if most MGTOWs that I run into these days are, I don't want to be demeaning, but, well, sorry, but men with mother's issues, or who have been screwed over by 3 girlfriends in their lives and now think all women are just evil. And instead of actually going their own way, they seem to go out of their own way to make sure everyone knows they dislike women. And it's an almost obsessive disliking sometimes that I don't think is healthy.
Yeah, what I don't like about MGTOW inserts in MRAs, sure there are many great MRAs, so many great ones, but there are some people who are both, they're like an MRA, but it's a MGTOW sympathizer, and it's kind of like they seem to put women down as a collective in order to lift men up, almost like, well, Hitler must be a great person because he's a man, and or I'm pretty sure whatever Hitler done is all a woman's fault somehow, and I actually heard that before. I was talking to a MGTOW, and he told me that everything Hitler done is to blame on his wife. And like, even before he had a wife, it's like men try to get power to impress women. And because men want to get power to impress women, everything is actually a woman's fault. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, they can be just as hateful as feminists. And like I said, if you are a man going your own way, then I shouldn't hear about you because you went your own way. You're gone. But MGTOWs can sometimes be some of the loudest people out there. It's like that person that wants to leave the party and it's like, bye everyone, I'm leaving. I'm really leaving. Can everyone see? I'm walking out now. I'm gone. It's like that. And sure, if you mix it with activism, if you are a MGTOW MRA, I get that, but there are a lot of MRAs a lot of MGTOWs that are like a bit bitter, in the sense that, oh, it's all useless and MRAs are stupid because they fight for a lost cause. Come join us in doing absolute jack shit about problems. And I don't like that attitude.
yeah, when I've been following MGTOW, like I looked at Sandman, Angry MGTOW, and whatnot, and they obsessively talk about women. I mean, some of it is different. Like, you kids, like the MGTOWs, like, I'm a MGTOW, and ever since I became a MGTOW, I can't stop getting laid. Women just throw themselves at me. And let me tell you guys, if you treat women like shit, women will fall out for you. Like, you will be able to get laid every single week. You just got to just treat women terribly, and they'll love you for it.
Yeah, I always feel like it's overcompensation for something that went wrong in their lives. I mean, someone once said, the only consistent in failing relationships is you. If you coming into the wrong women, not that that justifies those women treating you wrongly, of course not. But I can give you an example. I had a friend who had an abusive boyfriend, um, and she had this really insecure personality, and I just know for a fact she can break up with him. Her next boyfriend will be exactly the same because some people attract the wrong type and are also vulnerable to the wrong type. And I guess that predators, if you want to call abusive partners predators, they also know who to pick out. They go for the insecure women, the insecure men that are vulnerable and can be manipulated and dominated like that. So, uh, you know, people need to understand before they get really bitter and dismiss an entire gender, whether it's feminists doing it or MGTOW doing it. Um, just look at yourself, you know, just and your own personal decisions. I mean, I have had bad experiences with men. I will not be specific about that, but I will not dismiss the entire gender, you know, as a whole. I think that would be very unfair.
Dr. Lehman says, question for Gryffix. You refuse to apply a lens to reality. Do you think you are lensless essentially?
Um, well, I guess you could see that like asking the question, you know, are you 100% objective? It's like, no, I'll try to be as objective as possible. I'll try to be as neutral as possible. I'll never be 100% this or that. When it comes down to that lens that I was talking about, what I mean is that um, a problem, uh, wait, well, how am I going to say this? The world and everything that happens in it is as three-dimensional as it can get, you know, and problems have many different layers. You know, I study history. If my teacher asks me, you know, what caused the French Revolution, I can't just say, well, people were angry with the state of affairs. I need to explain what was going on an economical level. I need to understand what was going on geopolitically. I need to explain the social sentiments, the religious sentiments. I need to explain so much stuff to create a 3D model that can explain, you know, why the French Revolution started. And I think when you take in a position like feminist, like MRA, you basically dig yourself in a trench and sort of block your viewpoint in the sense that you are only looking at something from one angle. Not always, but there are people who do this. And I sort of want to protect myself from that because you can get easily dragged along. If I can imagine if I were a feminist and I am inside all day fighting sexism, that at one point I think the entire world is against women. And if you are an MRA that sits inside all day only fighting against male oppression, you start seeing male oppression everywhere. So that's why I try not to have that lens apply to how I perceive reality. And I don't think I am lensless, as he puts it, because we all have our biases. We all have our own backgrounds and our own opinions. Those will always influence you. But if I can actively distance myself from a position that could warp my reality, then I guess I will. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it's just that somebody asked, Kill All Humans asked, do you sometimes want to strangle Dr. Lehman?
Yeah, that's it. Whenever I'm in a hangout somewhere, there will always be weird questions about Dr. Lehman. No, I won't strangle Dr. Lehman. I mean, that's illegal. That like could get me into serious trouble. Would I want to? I'll leave that up to you. Let's keep an air of mystery on whether or not I like to strangle Lehman.
Do you consider the Netherlands to be heavily influenced by feminism?
You mean like third wave feminism? Specifically?
Pick which one. It doesn't really matter which way because nobody asked me that question before. You know, you should just let the interviewee interpret the question any way they want.
Well, I mean, because obviously feminism had a huge impact on the entirety of the Western world, even if it's only for the women in my country advocating for the right to vote and stuff like that, you know. So you can't, whatever you think of the first wave of feminists, some people would even dismiss them. Whatever you think of that had a huge impact on the country, obviously. Although I do think that most likely women would have gotten the right to vote without feminists. But regardless, if I look at third wave feminists specifically, they exist there. They write their angry blogs just like they do in other countries. Some are worse than others. But if you look at the influence they have, that's very little. I mean, people still talk about the wage gap here. I guess that is true, but the shit that Everyday Feminism spews or that The Guardian spews, if you would start a debate here about basically the stuff that, what was it again in England where it was made illegal to basically talk to a woman, if you address her and she doesn't want that, um, then that can be seen as harassment, which is ridiculous because that means you can't ever talk to a woman that you meet on the streets. That would never happen here. There is very little audience for the feminists that, try to preach about feminism. I don't think the Netherlands has the culture or the atmosphere at the moment for something like that for something like that to put foot on soil.
So you guys don't have to deal with like I had a few people from England tell me that certain companies give women paid period leave and like crazy shit like that.
That
So,
that
like,
would not happen. Well,
or
maybe
like,
a company could do it. I mean, if you have a company that's led by an idiot, then yeah, that could happen. But never something weird state enforced. I think it seems very little, uh, you know, interest in what feminists have to say here.
mm. So
What
feminism.
I have to wait, what do need to quickly add to that is that unlike America and unlike England, the Netherlands does not have that campus culture. Over here, you pretty much go to uni, you do your class, you come back home, you do your homework. You go out on the weekends, but the heavy campus culture where university is basically like a society, right? It's basically a, just a society of people that attend that university, that work at that university, and there are book clubs and film clubs and whatever, and activist groups. You don't really have that here, which I think helps a lot because I do feel like a lot of the regressive rhetoric comes from the universities.
It seems like you guys don't suffer from feminism the way other countries have been. You know, from listening, at least for what you said so far, it seems like you guys aren't, dealing with so much the regressive aspects of feminism.
No, not with feminists. We do have people that start, that have made attempts to get some sort of Black Lives Matter movement going in my country, and I could see that get successful. Um, but no, feminism not. Feminism not. That's just a marriage that won't work, I think.
Okay, so I'll skip the next question. Let's see. What's the think of the alt-right?
What I think of the alt-right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm, well, I wouldn't wholeheartedly condemn everyone on the alt-right, of course, but I feel like a lot of people on the alt-right um, are just people that are extreme right, but understand that it is not a very popular title, so instead they say alt-right. I mean, if you see some of the stuff they say, um, it is really, really, really extreme. And a lot of them have like Twitter accounts with like swastikas as profile pictures, or like you have seen that, those anime Hitler characters, where you have like an anime, like a drawn character that wears like an SS outfit, and they wear that as a badge of honor, and they think they're being so edgy and so brave. Well, I don't even think half of them understand what those symbols mean and what weights they carry. I don't really like them. I think they're an answer to the extreme left, a very unwelcome answer, but an answer that was to be expected. Um, and I think it is a danger to the discussion in the sense that they bolster the regressive left's arguments. I mean, imagine Donald Trump. I'm not saying Donald Trump is alt-right. In my experience, people that are alt-right go further than Donald Trump. Um, uh, Imagine if Donald Trump would become president, and he would make a remark again about Megyn Kelly being on her period just because she asked him a tough question. Um, then feminists are going to whine about that, and they are potentially even going to have a point. You know what I mean? You're gonna throw them ammunition in the lab if you are like some of these alt-right folk, because some of them are legitimate racists or are legitimate white supremacists, or very bigoted towards gay people, for instance. And you're basically giving the regressive left's claim legitimacy, and that is not something I'm happy with.
I totally agree with you. Let's see. Dr. Lehman, Dr. Lehman says, question for Gryffix. Is there an observable difference between Dutch mainstream feminism and U.S. American mainstream feminism?
Yes, I don't think it's as extreme, which is partially because I think the university culture here is different, but also because it's less popular. You know, if you can't even get people to think that women are oppressed, then, you know, you're not also going to say all men are rapists. That's a bridge too far. You know, first you want people to think women are oppressed, then you start telling them about how toxic masculinity ruins the country, and then you start with all men are rapists. You know, that's like a ladder. If I can get you to agree with me on A, I won't take you to C. So you see that uh, feminism is less extreme and less popular. I mean, sure, you have feminists invited on talk shows and they do their thing, but if you actually look at what people think about feminists, they heavily disagree with it, except for the wage gap and the whole women in important job positions thing. There is no real influence almost from third wave feminism in my country.
Oh, Megan wants you to talk about your love for Bill Maher.
That's a run no that's a running joke I have with him. Um, I don't have like a particular thing for Bill Maher. I maybe need to explain that now. I think someone once in my comments section accused me of being a leftist, and that person said, "Oh, I bet you fuck Bill Maher," and it's like, yeah, man, I don't. But I was sort of playing along, so I said, yeah, Bill and me are gonna get married soon, and that sort of caught on, and it's partially my fault because I kept making those jokes, and now that question occasionally pops up in chats. I don't have a particular thing for Bill Maher. He's a cool guy, but yeah, I hope that answer satisfies you, Megan.
Um, do you wish more people were interested in politics?
Yes. And I mean like legitimate interest, because nowadays I see that there is this academic culture. Well, I shouldn't call it academic culture, but this culture in which it is cool to be an intellectual. It's like, oh, you know, I read literature. It's like, oh, what have you read? It's like, you know, it's this it's pretentiousness almost. A lot of people are like, yeah, I follow politics. I'm very well informed. They do that, well, basically to look better. And if you actually question them on their political views, they tend to know very little. You know, if you ask someone, what is your political position? And you just say, oh, left, or right. So, yeah, but it's more nuanced than that. Explain it to me. And if they can't, then I think they're not well informed on politics. I wish people were more interested in politics, but then I mean a legitimate interest that will also motivate them to actually do research and to come to, you know, solid conclusions, or no conclusion, just say I don't know. Okay to sometimes say I don't know what to think about this. um so yeah, I guess yes, but in like a intellectually honest way, not because it's cool or hip to pretend you understand politics.
Yeah, because now politics are a lot like the I read people, like how people be a lot like, yeah, I read, like I totally read like a lot. Look at all the books I have, and yet they have a really small, limited vocabulary for a person who reads.
Well, yeah, but also it's a bit the you could call it the Brian Griffin effect, I guess. I guess that's what it reminds me of. Um, It's just like, oh, I listen to classical music. Yeah, what do you listen? Uh, Mozart? It's like, okay. Like, what do you listen from? What do you listen to from Mozart? You know, yeah, I forgot, but it's this thing. You know, if I hear it, I know what it is. I mean, it's not. I'm not putting those people down. It's. I find it a bit amusing. I mean, I don't know a lot about classical music. I'll state that, you know, straight away. But yeah, there is that attempt to look at that, you know, that pretentiousness, and it's understandable, but it's not really. I don't like it when people take a very firm position in a discussion that they don't fully understand. Like if people say that the problems in the Middle East, for instance, are not related to Islam, or on the other end of the spectrum, if they say that it's all because of Islam. And, you know, if I don't mind if people don't know things, but if I then, you know, sit down with you and say, look, these are all the factors that come into play, I'd like you to take me serious and listen to me. Not necessarily agree with me, but at least consider my point. And there are people who have decided, you know, it's only Islam. I don't want to hear anything else. They don't inform themselves. They keep preaching that. And then when someone corrects them, they don't want to hear it. And they keep taking part in debates that they, well, shouldn't be having, I think. Well, not saying shouldn't be having, but they don't have the knowledge, I guess, to come to a well-informed conclusion.
Yeah, it reminds me of like I saw this video you made where you were addressing the Young Turks, and where this guy from the Young Turks, I think his name is John Adiola. It's like we're gonna educate Donald Trump a little bit, and he had no idea about Brexit like at all. He
No,
had
he
no idea
didn't.
it was about Britain trying to leave the EU, and he like wrote like Brexit leaves the euro. It's like you're like what the fuck, and like you were like you did like a long rant. You're like really angry because it's kind of like here they are talking about they're going to educate Donald Trump. And you're like, well, you said that you were glad that Donald Trump admits that he doesn't know, and it's better than acting pretentious and cocky over something you don't really know about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have talked to social justice warriors who disagreed with my position on Islam, but who also said, well, I don't really understand the Middle East. I find that, even from a social justice warrior, a more respectable position than someone who agrees with me on Islam, but then pretends to know all these things and turns out not to know them. Because you're talking about such a complex topic, and I am not that well informed on the Middle East either, but I'll say that and I'll have myself corrected if someone else knows more than me. And a lot of people pretend and bluff their way through. For instance, there was someone who disagreed with me that with the notion that religion played a big part in a lot of the violence that the world has seen in our history, you know. And he was like, no, it was all power, you know, in the Middle Ages, it was all power, it had nothing to do with religion. And I named him. I said, okay, so how about the Bartholomeus night, the Bartholomeus massacre? Are you going to blame that on a power? I mean, and he said, well, the Bartholomeus massacre was obviously a war that was fought. I said, wait, it's not a war. The Bartholomeus massacre wasn't a war. It was a wedding during which a lot of people got slaughtered, if I remember correctly. It's not a war. He kept bluffing. It's like, regardless of the fact that you were talking about something you don't understand, it's a YouTube comment. You could have done the research and then responded to me. But instead, he knew I was questioning him about the Bartholomeus massacre. And instead of quickly going to Wikipedia to see what it was, he just said, oh, well, it's just a war. And I said, it's not a war. And he said, well, yeah, it was, though. I said, no, it isn't. It isn't. It was not a war. So that annoys me. I don't mind. It is Stephen Hawking, I think, who said ignorance ignorance is not a threat. It is the illusion of knowledge that is a threat. That's what Stephen Hawking said.
Yeah, I totally agree. Dr. Lehman has like two messages for you. So I'm going to read the first message, then I'll hop down to the second message. First, Dr. Lehman says, question for Gryffix. Psst. All I need to read is Machiavelli and Nietzsche, but philosophy sucks and is SJW nonsense. But all I do is philosophy. Every YouTube skeptic ever. Then Dr. Lehman says, at Gryffix, literally all crusades are exactly identical and the same. The Middle East is one monolithic entity, my dude.
Yeah, I think he's being satirical. Yeah, but it is. There are people who are somewhat like that, and who are just as confident in the discussion, bluffing their way through the talk, as someone who knows what they're talking about. I mean, that to me is more annoying than someone who just says I don't know. There's nothing wrong with not knowing stuff. Honestly, there's stuff I know so little about, but I won't pretend otherwise.
Yeah. There's a comment from Belisaurus22. Sorry if I butchered it. She or he says, question for Gryffix. Do you find any American news sources reliable when discussing European affairs?
Well, I don't see enough of them um, to really judge. I guess CNN tends to stick with the facts a lot of the time, just dry factual information. They try very hard to remain this air of neutrality from what I've seen, and sometimes that is even dishonest. I mean, I remember Sam Harris telling Dave Rubin in his interview. Dave Rubin interviewed Sam Harris, and Sam Harris said, "You are one of the few journalists that doesn't pretend to be neutral." You know, it's sometimes better to say, "This is my opinion and this is why I think it," and you can disagree and explain me why. That is sometimes better, and it comes across more believable than someone who sits there and is obviously disagreeing with you, but remains this air of fake neutrality. And CNN can have that sometimes, from what I've seen, but they tend to stick with the facts. I could go to CNN about some incidents and have a very decent understanding of what happened. MSNBC, Fox, those are obviously very heavily opinionated. I won't even get into the Young Turks. So yeah, I guess CNN is all right from what I've seen.
Even after WikiLeaks and how it seems like the Democratic National Convention, and they were working along with some journalists, I think, here and there. Or at least that's what I got from Twitter.
Oh, that could be true. I don't know.
Anyway, Donovan Villy, probably butchered that, says, question for Gryffix. Is there any middle ground you can see about accepting migrants and tackling the surge of attacks in Europe?
Yeah, well, you need to find a middle ground. There are a lot of people who say, "Oh, deport all Muslims." It doesn't work like that. It doesn't even work with the people who just came in today and don't have a passport yet. Deporting them even is incredibly hard. There are countries you return migrants to those countries and they just won't take them back. There are countries that won't take them back. What are you going to do? You're going to dump them right over the border in Belgium or in Germany? You know, it's and even, you know, there are people who say after the war in Syria is over, you know, we're just going to send the migrants back. Are you now? To what? The country fell into anarchy. There's nothing to go back to. You can't send them back. And that's so regardless of what you want to do, we need to be very realistic about what we can do. And the reality is, I really think so, that we're just going to be stuck with the biggest lot of people that came in here. I don't think they're going to go back. I don't think we can go back. And all the people that say, oh, just, you know, dump them in the ocean or whatever. That's, yeah, I understand that may, you know, sound very popular and may get some good reactions out of your friends. But when we're talking about serious policy making, no, that's not an option. It's not something we're going to do. It would also be very pricey and hardly possible to carry out. But regardless of all that, I think you can see, well, what could you do? I guess you could do background checks. And even if you can deport people, at least you have on your radar who might cause problems. I do courses the way Denmark did it, teaching those immigrants about the country they are now living in. You know, the differences between men and women, that they are equal, you know, in Europe. Teach them about how we treat gay people. Teach them that would be a very good start. And I also don't tolerate anything else. I mean, there were migrants in the Netherlands who were gonna get a tour through Amsterdam, which is fine. You know, let those people have some fun. But then they could request to have a male tour guide if they had a problem walking behind a woman. It's like, no, stop. This is already where it goes wrong. You either walk along with the woman or piss off. It's that simple. This is where you live now, and you'll have to put up with this. So I'd have I'd have a zero tolerance policy on stuff like that. I'd monitor mosques more. Because I think that is where a lot of the crazy ideas come from. I'd stop the influx of money from Saudi Arabia, which is sponsoring mosques. I'd stop organizations such as Turkish organizations based in the Netherlands that slow down integration and spread a rather conservative Islamic worldview. Those are very... You never know how effective it will be in the long run, but I think those are good first few steps. And well, yeah, what else could you do? I'd say we have this word. I don't know if it exists in English. Hold on, I'll pull it up and translate it. Hold on a moment, because I don't know. Where's my dictionary? There. The dictionary doesn't even take... Well, basically, it's like a cop, but it's not actually like a policeman. It's basically someone that patrols your neighborhood and your neighborhood alone. And he is just walking about to see if anything is going the way it's supposed to go. And if there would ever be an actual incident, he has to contact like the actual cops who will rally to the spot. And in the Netherlands, there's a lot of talk about getting these people for like bad neighborhoods, for ghettos, because we need someone that is very frequently in for instance, Islamic majority neighborhoods, and who can sort of get a decent understanding of the social structure there, you know. And if one teenager that before didn't cause any trouble suddenly just retracts himself in isolation, we need someone to be there that will report that and be like, okay, this person might cause trouble. Or if you see some teenagers heavily misbehaving, you know, we need people that get familiar with the environments where homegrown terrorists come from. And I think if you do those things, that would be a good start.
Yeah, I love your idea a lot more than I like Donald Trump's. We got to build a wall, and it's going to be a huge one.
Yeah, walls. Yeah, we had a Berlin Wall once that worked so well. It's not like anyone tried to cross it and it turned into a fucking atrocity, but regardless of that.
Yeah, you just got to make it 10 feet higher.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not like someone at one point just drove a truck through the Berlin Wall, or it's not like people built little planes and tried to fly over the wall, or built tunnels. You know, walls are waterproof systems.
Let's see. Firefox's Red asks you, question for Gryffix, but oh shoot. Let's see. Question for Griffiths, but do you think a middle ground or moderate solution to the migrant crisis is realistically attainable right now? What has to change? happen to solve this problem?
So if what I just said is realistic, is that what he's asking?
Um, I think so. Do you want to see it for yourself? I could.
Well, yeah, well, I'll scroll up. Do you think, do you think a middle ground or moderate solution to the migrant crisis is realistically attainable right now? Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think it's way more attainable, to be honest, than the radical solutions. The people who say close all borders, deport everyone. Although the close all borders idea is not necessarily so bad. It's not bad at all. Um, Although it depends on how you go about that. But the idea, oh, just deport everyone, which is, I think, an extreme idea, I think that's way more unrealistic. I think this is a very complex issue, and you will have to be in the middle ground and be diplomatic about this. I think it is the only solution. I'm afraid all the radical things people come up with are not going to help.
All right. Goober GSA says Gryffix, they will be made to go back if it keeps up like this, if they are lucky, and they and that's a sad state of affairs. It was addressed to you, so.
Um, they will be made to go back if it keeps up like that, if they are lucky. Uh, made to go. Well, that's that language again. It's like, no, we'll just make them. So at what point of it's probably not possible don't people understand? So, yeah, but we'll make them. It's like, no, full stop. It's most likely not possible. Made to go back. It isn't. If it's not possible, you can make them go back, but then it's still not possible. You know, it's you can add words to that sentence as long as you wish. If something's not possible, that's where it ends. And of course, you can make some of them go back. And that has happened. There have been migrants sent back, but it depends on the country where they're from. It depends on a whole lot of different things. It depends on legislation. You can't just deport everyone. That is impossible, nearly. Um, so yeah, and I do agree with you that there might be parties that come to power in the next few months that will advocate for that and will try to pull it off. Um, and I even fear for worse things. I fear for violence in Europe and more radical mindsets to take over, because obviously mainstream left and right wing is failing in every way to deal with this issue accordingly.
Yeah, I don't like how there's a left or right swing system. I don't know how it is in the Netherlands or Europe, but I know that in America, it's like it's kind of like the Republicans are like we're against gay marriage, we're against the transgender people using the female bathroom, and it's kind of like the rights is kind of like, well, when it comes to gays, most Americans accepted them, and I wish that's the right would just drop that rhetoric, because that's the reason why people don't want to vote for them, is because their views are just it's something that many people can't agree with. So
Well, yeah, but you have a, a right wing party that I don't think is really representative of what a proper right wing party is like. I'm not saying that European right wing parties, bask in glory. Absolutely not. I think all political systems seem to be fucked in the world at the moment. But there are way more parties, and therefore many more degrees of right wing parties and left wing parties. You have center right, you have extreme right, and everything in between. So that does allow more nuance in the discussion than just the Republicans or the Democrats.
yeah, I really like your system in Europe. How Europe has like a parliament. I wish here in America we could get rid of the two-party system and perhaps maybe have a parliament instead.
Well, it has its flaws, but I don't think what America has right now is working necessarily really well with the two-party system.
Yeah. Let's see. Have you ever been a Christian?
Sorry, what?
Have you ever been a Christian?
Um, yes and no. Um, I went to a Catholic school as a kid. Um, my parents are both atheists. The reason why they sent me to a Catholic school is because, at least in the Netherlands, religious schools are not the way they are in a lot of other countries. It's not that we have like a Protestant school that will really teach your child to be a proper Protestant, or a Catholic school that will really turn your child into a Catholic. There are a lot of very old schools here that were founded as Catholic institutions and that still carry that name, but you don't really see it in their education. So I was sent to one, but that was actually a somewhat religious school, although it differed per teacher. It's especially the older teachers that were kind of religious-y, very Jesus-y. The young teachers, not at all. And I was sort of made to believe that God existed, and if I would not agree with that, I'd go to hell if I turned out to be wrong. I had a teacher tell me that. And I was like 11 at the time, I think, when he literally taught me that, and I thought, oh well, let's, not take the risk, be a Christian. But it was like a passive thing. It's like, oh, I guess I'm a Christian then. It's like just taking on the title. It never actually came with any Christian practices, and I think deep down inside, I never really uh, believed it. I mean, a lot of Christians accuse atheists that they've never been real Christians, and a lot of atheists take that as insult because they used to be very dedicated Christians. In my case, it's actually true. I've never really been a Christian, if you look at how if I actually believed it.
Let's see. Is there anything that you wish your audience knew about you?
Mm, wish they knew about me. Um, well, not about me per se, but um, maybe about what I try to do. I am not attempting to necessarily push a narrative or necessarily convince people one way or the other. And as much as I dislike Donald Trump, for instance, if Donald Trump would make a good point in a debate, I acknowledge that. Yesterday I disagreed with an MSNBC article because I thought they were misrepresenting something he said. And I was angry about that, even though I don't like Donald Trump, or Hillary Clinton for that matter. I don't like her either. And I guess sometimes my audience, just like any audience, expects me to be like in the trenches fighting a battle for a certain position. And maybe you can say that I am doing that for liberalism, but the other day I uploaded a video in which I critiqued the whole Cenk Uygur Alex Jones affair. And my take on that was that Alex Jones was being an obnoxious cunt who was way overboard with how he dealt with Cenk. He shouldn't have gotten into the man's personal space, like tapping him on the shoulder. I'd hate that too if someone invaded my personal space like that. But then Cenk went completely overboard in his response, and they are both to blame. And I had a part of my audience that's left-wing that was angry and said, oh, you're just an Alex Jones fangirl. And then I had a right-wing part of my audience that said, oh, you're just a Cenk Uygur fangirl. Both heard that I criticized a person they liked. And they forgot everything else. They just heard that I criticized their idol, and therefore I was an Alex Jones fangirl or a Cenk Uygur fangirl. And it's funny that you see that in the same comment section, an accusation of that I was siding with either. Well, I obviously wasn't. I was just, accusing both of doing wrong things. And I often do that, and then people get angry with me or accuse me of anything. They call me, I've been called from a regressive to a racist. It's I seem to piss everyone off equally. And all I want people to know is that I just really try to be as objective as possible. Because I think diplomacy is necessary to get anywhere with anyone. No matter how much you disagree with a person, you need to be objective and neutral, and otherwise even trying to have a conversation is futile. It's not going to go anywhere. And I want my audience to know that, and I'd expect them to sort of, well, I wouldn't say support me in that, but understand that instead of, necessarily rallying to conclusions if I, critique Trump or critique Hillary. That maybe.
Yeah, yeah, people seem to be too politicized. It's kind of a lot like you could criticize Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton both equally, and then you would get, oh, you're like, a Hillary Clinton supporter, and you support this and that, and you just get this radical knee-jerk reaction. Like, it's like, I just criticized both of them. How the hell am I how the hell am I on Hillary Clinton's side by criticizing both of them equally?
Yeah, yeah, and I guess that, if even if I like debate a feminist, and that person would say, I faced a lot of sexism in my life, I wouldn't immediately go, no, you didn't. I might think that, but I might just say to her, okay, and I'm not denying that. I'm not denying your personal grievances. Maybe you did face a lot of sexism in your life, but that is diplomacy. That is thinking very consciously, about how you choose your words, and you have to sometimes. For instance, I could have a debate in college, and someone would bring up a point, and it is the stupidest point I ever heard. But I wouldn't say, dude, what a retarded point. No, I'll say, oh, interesting. And then there would be like 2 seconds of silence, and I'd be acting as if I was considering it, and then I'd respond in a respectful manner. That can make the difference between someone thinking this person is listening to me and taking me seriously, and that person getting all defensive. And sometimes you need to be less radical in your communication. And I feel like no matter how right people are, sometimes people are also just shit-flinging. It really seems like shit-flinging. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you because it's kind of a lot like if somebody. Okay, what I've noticed from being in internet forums is that when a person just dismisses an idea and argues, the other person is going to get all offended and, either disengage or there's going to be a fight. But if you actually sound like you're listening to somebody, people will feel respected that you actually listen to them and consider their idea, and then you can have a real conversation with them.
Yeah, it's definitely more productive.
Yeah. Let's see.
But I have to. You have to make the distinction, of course. I said before, I don't necessarily try to change people's minds. With that, I mean that I'm totally fine with you watching me and disagreeing with me. I wouldn't feel like I failed then. But you could say that I'm challenging people's opinions. And there are also channels who don't have that intention. They just do response videos for entertainment purposes. And that is, of course, a fundamental difference. In that case, I understand how you could do ponage or slamming or whatever.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to answer this or not, but Bailey Saurus 22 asks, question for Gryffix, what's just your favorite shit posting episode?
Well, I don't know what shit posting episode. I don't even I don't know what that person means by that. I think.
I don't know what they mean either. I think what they mean is you must have seen a lot of shit posting in different hangouts, and I guess they were asking what was your favorites. I think that's what they meant.
I don't really. I don't know. I don't think I'd have an interesting answer to that. I don't recall enough hangouts to pick a favorite one, I think. Especially in terms of shit posting. My hangouts tend to be not so much shit posting and more serious, usually.
Yes. Does anybody have any political questions, or what questions do you guys have for Gryffix? Any questions that you really wanted to ask her, you've been holding it in and now it's let's see. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you've been having to say. It's kind of like you brought up a whole lot of good points with the whole Muslim thing, that we should try to perhaps explain the difference between their country and where they're from and where they are right now. It's kind of like, this is where you are now, and it's different from where you've been. Women are equal where you're from, and it's kind of like a woman's words is equal to that of a man, not half. Women aren't considered mentally deficient. It's kind of like you can't think that way in the West. It's like you left your country to come here, integrate, but I don't think all of them being all clustered together and having their own community helps.
No, it doesn't.
Well, I don't see any more questions addressed to you, so I'll guess I'll close it. Thank thank you everybody for watching. Sorry for all the stuttering, but I still hope that you guys enjoyed this interview. And yeah, any last words, Gryffix?
No, thank you very much for having me. It was really interesting.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.